exactly sure how he caught the Boston Bruin. We'll try to get a look at that, or maybe Coatsy had a good look at it.
You know, Jonesy, I was watching it, and I'm at the other end, but I can still see down the length of the ice, and Jones took him against the wall. I thought from where I was that he was close enough to the wall where it wasn't a boarding. If anything, okay, it could have been a boarding because his back was to Randy Jones, but in this case, it didn't appear that it was this severe. It seemed very innocent when Jones took him up against the wall. But as I mentioned, if we have this on replay, Jonesy, is that you'll be able to see that his back is to Randy Jones up against the wall. Next thing you know, he goes right down. You be a judge from where you are on this replay.
Here you'll see Bergeron going in for the puck. Both players get in there, and then Randy Jones gets in. And the hit is from behind, but when two players are coming at the puck at the same time, so obviously the dasher board being there and Bergeron being a little bit away from the boards when it happened.
Plus his head is right there at the edge of the dasher board. That's something that we didn't see on the dangerous part. And you can't defend against that for Randy Jones. Randy's just going to take him up against the wall. Bergeron's not the biggest guy to begin with, so he's coming down, he's putting the brakes on. As he's putting the brakes on to come into the wall, his head's right at the height of the dasher board.
There's no question it's a penalty, but as we show this in slow motion, this makes it look a lot worse than it really was in terms of Jones' intent.
There's no question. Yeah. The slow motion is the part that really, when you look at it slowly, it looks really bad.
Yeah, it does.
But there's no question that it was very similar to a hit the other night with Volchenkov put on David Booth of the Florida Panthers, where the player who's going in for the puck originally puts himself in a vulnerable position, as well as the fact that you've got a player skate in.
You can't defend against it.
You can see a guy.
This is the key.
Steve, we're hearing you now as the puck goes in, and at real speed, they were almost engaged before they got there, and it's very difficult. The speed of this sport, I'm really surprised this doesn't happen more often.
And if you're the defending player, you're not entirely sure that Patrice Bergeron isn't going to continue in behind the net. So you're making an aggressive physical play to take your man out, but when he stutter steps to stop, it's very difficult to slow down before you run into the player. So Randy Jones obviously doesn't want this to happen to Patrice Bergeron. Nobody wants to see this. It's been hitting from behind has been really, for the most part, something we don't see as often as it happens. And Claude Julien very concerned about his player.
Major conversation down here in the Zamboni entrance is, why this happened. Now, when you watch Bergeron, Jonesy, and Jimmy, he puts the skates sideways. In other words, he goes into a snowplow position to kind of put the brakes on. When he does that, his body crouches down. Now, he's the biggest guy in the world. That's when Jones, now watch his knees. He'll throw his knees. Now, see, he's in the snowplow position, putting the brakes on. Jones is already making his move to take him out, and what he does is basically stop right before he hits the boards, and Jones got no way to prevent from keep going, and that's where he drills Bergeron's head right into that dasher board.
That's a good point. You see how he slams the brakes on. Jones assumes he's going to continue his path, and it was obviously the perfect storm, if you will, just a terrible situation. He's obviously in a lot of trouble. Jim McCrossan, doctors, obviously the entire training staff, the Bruins out there, they're cutting his jersey right now to give him some attention underneath his equipment. Patrice Bergeron, 22-year-old player, real talented individual who has played his entire career here in Boston. Last year had 70 points, and is a guy who is a tremendously talented guy, Jonesy, who is a big part of this Boston team. And right now, of course, everyone's just concerned about his well-being.
Yeah, he's in the top 3 of players 23 years of age or younger as far as points already in his National Hockey League career. Just Crosby and Ovechkin are other guys that are in that similar mold. So that's how good Patrice Bergeron is. And, everyone's looking on here and just hopeful that he's going to be okay.
So he gets, obviously, the best attention. The doctor was out there very quickly. And oftentimes in these situations, of course, we see them immobilized and people get very worried. They are taking every precaution at this point. That's part of it, too. They have to think the worst in order to make sure that he gets the best of care. So both teams, obviously Flyers and Bruins, looking on with a lot of concern. This is when, as a hockey player, and Jonesy, you as a former player, you forget about what color jersey you have on. It's all just about, and you can all relate, because you take hits along the boards, and you're afraid that this could happen, because it could happen any time in any game.
Any second. It can happen anytime you're on the ice, and obviously when you're a player sitting on either bench, the concern is for the individual that is on the ice and that is injured. And it doesn't matter if it's your teammate or obviously a guy from the other team, but there is a little bit of movement from his hands and fingers, and see what happens here.
In watching this, it was just last week here at the Bank North Center that they had Travis Roy, if you remember correctly, who was in his first college game, had the same problem, broke his neck in his first game in college out of Portland, Maine. He was here and honored in this building last week. So this a little bit more important to this crowd here in Boston. But once again, guys, I did not think that Randy Jones in any way looked upon this as a vicious hit. This was just taking the guy up against the wall.
Well, it's not even in Randy Jones' makeup. He's really not a physical defenseman by nature. He'll take the man out when he gets the chance, and that's, I think, all he thought. I think, Coach, you actually nailed it when you showed that one replay. Bergeron really slammed on the brakes. I don't believe Jones expected that, and at that point he was already committed, and you just can't, at the speed that they were going, you just really can't pull up. It's just impossible to do, and all we can do here now, of course, is hope that Patrice Bergeron is okay, and they are really giving him a lot of attention right here. As you can see, a lot of people out on the ice, and he's out there now.
Our Jimmy McCrossan in there as well, the Flyers athletic trainer. So everyone trying to help out here.
It's gone very quiet here, of course, as you would expect at the TD Bank North Garden. And they've got him, appears now, strapped to that gurney, and they will lift him onto the stretcher and get him off the ice, and then obviously to the hospital as soon as possible. We'll try to get some kind of report for you. We've seen a lot of hits like this, and Jones, I mean, the NHL is doing all it can to legislate them out of the game, but again, with the speed of the game, the size of these players, some of these collisions are going to happen even when they're not intentional, and you know, the risk is run out there. And you know, we hear people complain about the money that athletes make, and sometimes in the case of hockey players, but as we said, players basically run this risk every time they hit the ice for a game.
And the more that the hitting from behind has been removed and further away from it that hockey has gotten, the more risk there is on the odd occasion where something like this happens, because the players let up themselves, the person going in on the forecheck. And the other side of it as well, I'm surprised that it doesn't happen more often to defensemen, because without the ability to hook and hold the oncoming forwards, a lot of times the D-men are put in that vulnerable position where they're forced to be up against the glass. And the most dangerous part is when you're a foot away from the glass. It's not when you're right up against the boards. There's much less chance of being injured like that. But when you're a foot away from the boards, that's when you see this type of occurrence, when you just have that opportunity where the ledge is right there and you battle your way into it. It's never a good sight.
Do you remember, Jonesy, when you were growing up and they were teaching you that you actually learned to go into the boards to protect yourself first? I mean, before helmets, you always had your glove up against the screen, or now glass. I'm dating myself by saying screen. But you always had your hand up against the glass to prevent your head from hitting the glass. And you always went into the boards in a position to make sure that if you did get hit in a precarious position, that you were going to make the best possible opportunity not to get hurt. And in this particular situation, when your head's down around that dasher, you're putting yourself in a bad position.
And, you know, and that's true, Coatsy. And again, we see it in slow motion. It looks like, you know, don't do that. But at real speed, it's so difficult. It happens in an instant. You know, you're right. You talked about this, Jonesy. Some of it is the fact that because the hitting from behind is being legislated out of the game, players are getting a little more comfortable in those positions along the boards in terms of not expecting to get hit. And then when they are, they're obviously very vulnerable.
There's a lot of players that will on purpose set up behind the goal knowing that they can have a little bit of room there in order to maneuver, and it's become a very good offensive play. But in a situation like this, Randy Jones is just thinking, I want to make the hit, I want to make body contact, and then unfortunately the player's in a position where he goes into the boards in a very awkward way, and we see the result here is not one that anybody ever wants to see.
Patrice Bergeron now being wheeled off the ice, getting a nice ovation here from the fans in Boston, and as I said, we'll try to get a report as soon as possible. 3 minutes, 53 seconds remaining in this first period when this game came to a halt when he took a hit from Randy Jones and went headfirst into the boards. And we can only hope that he's going to be okay. I did see some movement before anyone even got to him in his legs, but that could have been nerves. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there was any voluntary movement. You can see they really have been seriously immobilized, I should say, and now they will get him to the hospital as quickly as possible.
Very tough couple of shifts here as players that are still remaining in this game. When you see something like that happen, you've got to be able to block that out. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a couple of shifts here where both clubs are trying to get their way, feeling their way back into this hockey game.
So they're going to give Jones a 5-minute major, and game misconduct at 16:07. And then Chuck Kobasu picked up a roughing minor as he went after Jones in front of the net. So the Flyers down to 5 defensemen. I mean, I guess when you see a player wheeled off after a hit like that, the game misconduct, the 5-minute major is pretty much automatic.
Yeah, I have no problem with the 5-minute major. Volchenkov got the exact same call. Ottawa versus Florida. David Booth has missed a couple games because of that as well. So the 5-minute major is the right call, and unfortunately for Patrice Bergeron, he's pretty hurt. So hopefully everything will be okay there, and these guys will get back at it.
It'll be 4-on-4 hockey here for the next 2 minutes, and then the Bruins will get a power play, barring any other calls. Peter Schaefer moves up into the Philadelphia zone. And as Jonesy mentioned, very difficult after being stopped for so long and being so concerned. And I'm sure everyone's still concerned about Bergeron to get your focus back, but the game is underway again, and you have to do that as Danny Briere gets to the puck. Briere moving through the neutral zone. Dances around a couple, but then loses the puck in a bad area. The other way goes Schaefer. Schaefer has that puck roll on him, so he doesn't take a shot. He turns back with it, and then he throws it to Char, who falls down. Puck picked up by Timonen. Timonen trying to cut in on goal, and he lifts it high and wide. He did pull away and get himself in on goal, but he missed the target.
Zdeno Chara wasn't expecting that pass there, and Kimmo Timonen really jumped up on that one through the neutral zone. What a smooth skater he is. He knew exactly how much he needed to get there in order to beat Peter Schaefer and just put that puck up over the net.
With Kessel whipping one across ice for Krejci. David Krejci stopped on a diving poke check by Jason Smith, but the Bruins get it back. Kessel throwing it back